Welcome everybody to Mom Street USA. My name is Jackie, aka Wishes Mama, and joining me is my wonderful co-host Kate, aka the Disney Cicerone. And this evening we are starting the first of a three-part episode series where we will be highlighting one-day park strategies. So think about if you've only got one day and you want to get the most out of your day. What is a good strategy for that? So that's our hope, is to give you that information so you can be more successful on your trips. And we're excited to share it with you tonight.
Yeah, and this is we decided to break this up so that we do 2 parks per episode, just because that makes a nice even number for between Disney World and Disneyland. And Jackie was so kind as to say, "Hey, Kate, maybe you should do Disneyland first, since you're going to be headed to Europe soon, and you probably need time to plan for that." And she's right. So,
Yes.
so tonight we're going to talk about Disneyland and Disney's California Adventure. And specifically, this is a little tough because one-day strategy for California Adventure isn't actually not that hard, but Disneyland, it's virtually impossible to see everything in Disneyland in a day, especially with kids. Like, you're just not going to get to everything. So the way that I broke it up and everything is kind of like, here are some things you should probably do in the morning, afternoon, and evening. So depending on your budget, if you are trying to save some money and you've had to scrimp and save to go on that trip and you just really can't do Genie Plus, we've got some options for you so that you're not waiting in line every day. And also, maybe if you're like, I just want to save as much time as possible and I've got the funds for it, we've got some things for Genie Plus as well. Do you want to mention our Genie Plus episode that we recently did?
Yeah, so just a few episodes ago, we did a whole in-depth dive on Genie Plus and how it works and what it is. But just a quick recap, Genie Plus is the system that you can purchase at Disneyland and Disney World that allows you to make your lines quite a bit shorter. So it is something that you do have to have a good strategy to utilize to be able to make the most out of everything that you would like to do. But we talked about the ins and outs about how to book and when to book and modifying and all of that type of stuff a few episodes ago. So if you want that deep dive information when it comes to park strategy, check out that episode first and then come back to us if you're someone who's watching this or listening to this later on after we're done being live. That will give you your basis of what you need to know, and then being able to piggyback onto that will be what Kate has for us tonight about the West Coast parks. That way we can utilize that information to the best of your ability.
Yeah, I think it was episode 35 in our Mom Street USA podcast. It's also on our YouTube for Mom Street USA. So either way you would like to view or listen to that podcast, then we have that for you. So it really is a very detailed episode of all the things of Genie Plus. And Jackie, I'm going to say it, Jackie is an expert at Genie Plus. She's used it so many times, not just when she's gone herself, but also for other people. She knows exactly how to use it and use it well.
And I actually helped our good friend tour guide Barbie a little bit when she was just out in Disneyland, just kind of playing around, so to speak, in the app to just see kind of how it compares to what she and I are very, very familiar with the Disney World version of that. And we found them to be very, very similar as far as once you're in it and you're booking and if you want to modify or adjust things, things seem to be fairly easy as far as that's concerned, as far as there's not a lot that you have to learn new if you're someone who's used to the Disney World system using the Disneyland system.
Right, exactly right.
And yes, that is episode 35, by the way. I just wanted to double check and make sure that we had that right in case, so that way people aren't searching for it. I knew it wasn't too far back there, but yep, episode 35.
I will say before I get started, I have some just general Disneyland notes. So I'm going to start in Disneyland, and then we'll go to DCA after. I'm going to use that for Disney California Adventure. It used to be Disney's California Adventure. They dropped the S, and I'm just going to say DCA because it's just easier for my brain.
I had no idea they dropped the S in the name.
Yeah, like officially. I'm trying to remember when. I want to say 2008. 2018. I feel like there was an 8 in there. Anyway, they did officially drop the S from the name. So now it's Disney California Adventure because they just, some people didn't, I don't know why. It didn't really matter either way. People just still call it DCA. So it's fine. Anyway, so some general Disneyland notes as we jump into this. I will say that Disneyland gets progressively more busy as the day goes on. So it's different in Disney World in that way because Disneyland is a locals park. So the locals, when they get off of work, they come to Disneyland, which is also why it tends to be open till like 11 or midnight. It's open way later than the Disney World parks. Although I have to say, Disney World used to be open later in the summer. And it's just
Yeah,
not anymore.
post closure,
Yeah.
they shortened it a lot, and then they've been slowly expanding it back
Like a
out.
tiny
And
bit.
occasionally in the summer, you will get some of those like 11 p.m. or midnight nights. But they also did away with those extra magic hours that were in the evening, which was what a lot of us remember being in the parks until 1 or 2 a.m.
That's right. Yeah.
with that. So
Yeah.
it feels a lot shorter now because we lost some of that extra time as well.
Yeah, it's just so interesting because I'm so used to having all those, like, you go and take an extended break in the room and you come back and you have like the whole night. It's like a whole nother
Yeah.
park day, and that's not necessarily true anymore. So it's kind of a bummer. But anyway, back to Disneyland. So because Disneyland gets progressively more busy as the day goes on, those morning hours are absolutely golden. You do not want to miss rope drop if you are visiting Disneyland. Obviously, if you're a local and you're just going after work, you're not going to go in the morning. But this is for people who are visiting Disneyland. Do not miss the morning hours. And I will say, I know there's a lot of like Starbucks lovers out there, but please, please, I beg of you, do not waste your morning in the Starbucks line. Just don't do it, friends. Like, and I have to, you know, it's always like one of my biggest pet peeves. And of course, as soon as I go to Disney World with my husband, Elliot, and like we're rolling up to Magic Kingdom, he's like, the only thing, I was like, I just want to get a nitro cold brew at Starbucks and walk down Main Street. And I was like, we are not doing that first thing. I'm sorry. Like, we will find
You're
time
going to
for you
have
do
to
that.
wait.
It's like, we will do that eventually, but we are not doing that right now. And I was like, that is like the biggest rookie mistake ever. And so, yeah, no,
Come on,
don't do that.
Elliot. Come on.
It's like, what are we doing? I'm like, no.
Well, because you didn't have kids with you. So he was like, we don't have to rush around as much.
Yeah. And Dr. Jackson says just mobile order it. That wasn't an option when we were in Disney World for mobile order for Starbucks that we saw. So it could be in Disneyland. I haven't tried it.
At World, just side note, you can only mobile order at the Disney Springs location.
Yeah, that's what I think.
I don't think any of the other locations in the parks allow you to mobile order.
Yeah. And Lem says, to be fair, you could get Starbucks before even early park entry. That's true. So Disneyland, yes, you could get a mobile order in Disneyland if you arrive there super early and you have time. But if you have access to any part of the park, don't waste your time at Starbucks. That's all I'm saying. Just, I'm off my soapbox now.
Especially if you've only got one day. Because remember, we
Yes.
are on a time crunch here. We've only got one day to get it all in.
Just get your coffee before you go. That's all.
Exactly.
You know, that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying don't get coffee. Or just do it mid-morning when it starts to get busy in the parks. Because it does usually around 10:30, 11, it does start to pick up in the parks because those people who didn't want to get up early are now finally rolling into the gates. And that is through Disneyland, Disney World. It's a little bit more true in Disney World than in Disneyland because Disneyland stays a little bit less crowds longer in the day. So it's virtually impossible to do all of Disneyland in a day. I would say, like, if you didn't have kids and you paid for all the Genie Plus things and all the individual lightning lanes and you just wanted to go for it, yeah, sure, you could do that. But we are talking about doing the parks with kids, and that would be really tough.
Yeah.
I will say, so also, we were talking about mobile order. I'd also say take advantage of using mobile order for quick service. I think people are starting to do it now for Disneyland more. When it first came to Disneyland, people were not using it at all because the locals were just used to standing in line, which was so funny to me. So I was like, I'll just bypass them and go pick up my food. But yeah, so make sure you use mobile order just as a general note. And also something that's different at Disneyland. Large portion of Fantasyland and also Toontown closes in the evenings when they do fireworks. So they physically block it off, like everything from the carousel over to the castle. So you can think of Mr. Toad, Peter Pan, Snow White, Pinocchio, and the carousel itself are all completely blocked off from about 8 to 10:15, 10:30 every night. So you won't have access to those rides then. And the same thing with Toontown. They also close Toontown around 8 and then open it back up around that same time. So take that into account as you plan. Don't plan to go on those attractions during that time. So that being said, those are my general Disneyland notes for strategy. And then with Genie Plus, these are my Genie Plus notes as we dig into a Genie Plus strategy. Like we said, the system works pretty similarly to the way it does at Disney World. So if you're familiar with the way Genie Plus works in Disney World, you're going to be like, this is pretty much the same thing and be happy. But the difference is you can't buy or book Genie Plus until you enter through the turnstiles. So you have to physically be in the park before you can book anything. Another reason you should probably get into parks early because that helps with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You should be able to do all 12 Genie Plus rides in a day, except when crowds are maybe like 9 to 10. Then you might get like 8 to 10 Genie Plus rides instead. So it is possible to use pretty much all of them unless they go down, which like Indiana Jones goes down and things like that. You know, you might, that's a thing. And that doesn't include the individual Lightning Lane rides, which in Disneyland are Rise of the Resistance and Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. So that being said, my recommendation is to arrive at least 40 minutes before the official park opening time. And because they don't have those scanners you just walk through, they physically inspect every single bag. So
Wow.
keep that in mind. It takes a little extra time to get through security sometimes, depending on the crowd levels. If it's not that crowded that day, it won't be that bad. But those morning lines can take a long time.
And I will mention really quick before we hop into like, do this first, do this second, that type of thing. Do keep in mind that although we mentioned that Genie Plus is almost identical in system when it comes to across the parks, there are a more significant amount of rides at Disneyland that are not included in Genie Plus. And I know, Kate, you'll probably talk about which one of those don't have a Genie Plus option and those types of things. But do keep in mind that where you see at Disney World, it's like 95 to 98% of your attractions. It's not quite that high at Disneyland. So there are some rides that you're going to really want to pay attention to that you don't have the option to use Genie Plus with. So keep that in mind as we work towards our day.
And a lot of that is because Disneyland is an older park. Remember, a lot of these rides, if they're not all the way back from 1955, they're at least back from like the Fantasyland rides are back from the 1980s, and there just isn't physical room for them to put in. I mean, I'm sure they would put in one if they could, but there just isn't space to put one. So they do have an option for like DAS returns and stuff. Usually they go in the exit of those rides that are in Fantasyland, but yeah, that's why a lot of them just don't have that option. So I'm trying to remember, this is my fault because I did not look this up. I don't usually buy individual Lightning Lanes because they're very expensive. Isn't it just one individual Lightning Lane per day? Is that, or is it?
So at Disney World, you can do 2 per day. But let's see.
I'll let you look that up while I chat. I've never tried to buy them there because it's like I'm just not going to spend the money for something I go to often. But so first I'm going to say arrive at least 40 minutes before park opening time, and then after you enter the park, I hate saying this because it's like you should be taking in the ambiance of the park, but after you kind of breathe and say, hey, I'm here, I'm on Main Street and I'm enjoying, find a bench, there's lots of them there, sit down, buy your Genie Plus, and then you can book your first, if you're going to use an individual Lightning Lane, which is an like a la carte option, I probably would book it for Rise of the Resistance first. And did you find an answer for that?
Yes. So it does say guests may purchase and select the next available arrival window for up to 2 attractions per day with the individual Lightning Lanes.
So you said, wait a minute, you say we can have both?
Up to 2, up to 2 per day.
Len said something and it distracted me, and I'm like, wait a minute.
Yes.
What promise I would pay attention.
Same that we have at Disney World. You can purchase up to 2 individual Lightning Lanes per person per day.
So then that's all of there is then for Disneyland. So you could get both of your individual Lightning Lanes if you're going to do that. The price for those though depends on the day and how much crowds there are, and it's $15 to $25 per person per ride. So you get one ride, and you have to pay per person, which is why I don't buy them, because they're very expensive. But if your time is extremely valuable and you want to ride them without any wait, well, with a little bit of a wait, that would be the best option for you. And for some people, that's not a big deal. And some of us are like, I can't ever do that. So, so buy your individual lightning lane for whatever you would like, and then just know that those will just be worked into your days with whatever return time you get plus at that time for your first ride, which is, I would recommend either Space Mountain or Indiana Jones first, with a leaning more towards Space. If you have a lot of littles that are with you that you're like, we're not going to ride Space Mountain, they're not into it or whatever, then, you know, or Indiana Jones for that matter, like you might not want to do both. So I have an order for which you should book the attractions for Genie Plus based on how fast their return time goes in the day. This is where Disneyland differentiates significantly from Disney World in that they just don't run out that fast.
Right.
You can probably still get space until early evening most days unless it's super, super crowded. But because it could run out, this is the order that it runs out the fastest, usually. And this is all statistically based. So the order that you should book is Space Mountain, Indiana Jones, Matterhorn bobsleds, Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin, Haunted Mansion, Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters, Star Tours, It's a Small World, and then Autopia. And usually those last couple ones you're probably not going to need because you probably are going to get on them. But, and again, you can get to all these in a day if you remember to book on time. I usually set an alarm in my phone that will go off when it's time to book another one, because otherwise I forget. Because who's paying attention to that?
And keep in mind, some of these you may or may not need, but that is your extensive list of what is included, correct, on your Genie Plus for Disneyland.
Yes. Yep. That's all. Those are all the Genie Plus attractions, and then individual individual lightning lanes are Rise of the Resistance and Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. I think depends on what you count as an attraction. There's 29 attractions at Disneyland. It's a lot. That's what I'm like.
Yeah.
So as we go through the rest of this list, I'm recommending things for morning, afternoon, and evening based on, and I'm not including any of these things on this list that are on the Genie Plus one, because this is assuming you're going to book Genie Plus as they come and they'll give you a return time and then you'll go to them. So I'm not including them as when to recommend on this list. We'll get to that in our next section. So that being said, I think I'm going to pause here really quick and say, if it's overwhelming to keep all of that organized, because it can be, this is not a paid promotion at all, but for years I have used touring plans, and I think that they are pretty spectacular for keeping track of all of this if you're not used to it at all. If you're kind of a veteran, like sometimes you just know what to do and you roll with it, but I think touring plans is great because you can plug in your return times and you can create an itinerary. You can put in your meal times if you have any reservations or where you want to eat. You can even put in break times, and then it will optimize your day based on current wait times, which is pretty fabulous.
Yeah, that's awesome to have. It would be nice if the Disney app actually functioned that way, wouldn't it?
It would be. Yeah, so Touring Plans is an app, but it's also on a website, and they're the ones that do the unofficial guides to Disney, like the books if you've ever seen them. Mm-hmm. And I think if you get the book, you actually do get a little discount on their subscription. It's a subscription service, but it's yearly. And I think the Disney World one is like 18 and change, and the Disneyland one's like 15 and change. It's not that much for an entire year. If you're going to go, it's worth it for your vacation to plan. So I would recommend Touring Plans if you're just kind of a newbie and you're trying to figure it out, because it's easier to set up on your computer, on a laptop or whatever. And then you can pull up it's a DLR Lines, I think is what it's called, as an app. And Disney World has its own. Disney World is better than the Disneyland one, if I'm honest. They have two different ones. It's just nicer, but they still function the same. And it's really helpful to plan and to put your day together if you want to be super organized, and also optimize it so you're waiting in line the least amount of time. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, and it's always helpful to know okay, if you've got these lightning lane times set or this one set, like, okay, what makes sense for me to like fill in the gaps basically
Yeah.
is the trickiest part of when it comes to these itineraries. You know, you can hope to get these certain times with Genie Plus, but a lot of times you've got to be flexible. You're either going to be flexible or you're going to be on your phone trying to modify while you're walking around the park. So it just really depends on which way you want to try to swing it. But having that list in order and also based on location is super helpful to have.
Yeah, and they also have it where you can change if you want to do less walking or less waiting or like a balance of both, which I think is and the pace that you're going to go. If you want to go really fast and you know your family can move quickly, you can the little slider and put it that way. If you know you're going to need more time, if you just like to go slower, or if you have somebody in your party that is maybe having a harder time walking or whatever, you know, it's nice that there's that you can make those accommodations for your family and it adjusts it accordingly. And it'll give you all the times that are wait times, in between times, ride times. It's very detailed. So all of you type A personalities for this is what you want to get. So yeah. Yeah. So anyway, let's jump into it knowing that you've possibly booked all your individual lightning lanes for the day. If you do not want to book an individual lightning lane for Rise of the Resistance, I would recommend going toward the end of the day, not the final end of the day, because they do close that queue earlier than the rest of the park in Disneyland. So it's not like most of the rest of the rides where it stays open till close and you have the last second to jump in line. They don't do that there. So I believe sometimes the line can close as early as 8 p.m. So you just want to get over there in the evening hours, when everybody's starting to congregate for like shows and stuff, is a good time to go over to Rise, because that back end of the park gets a little bit less busy during that time. So that's what I'd recommend if you don't want to buy an individual lightning lane for that. And pretty much a similar thing to Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, although they do keep the queue open later for that. All right, so you've gotten your individual lightning lanes, if you or not, you've booked your Genie Plus ride for the day. I would always, always, always recommend you start in Fantasyland. Full stop. Don't even consider anything else, especially if you have kids. If you've got older kids that are like over the dark rides or whatever, which makes me sad if that's true,
right?
Then you want to go to the left side of the park and do things like Indiana Jones and stuff like that. Go left instead of right. Like left is always right at Disney, remember? But I would always recommend you start in Fantasyland, because these are all slow loading rides and they will have lines virtually all day in the parks. So the morning is your best time to get on them with some lower wait times, essentially. And you can really knock out like a whole bunch of them. They're right next to each other. It doesn't take very much time and they're very short rides as well. So I've done like almost all of them in an hour and a half, I think was it. So it's great. And there's a ton there. So this is Alice in Wonderland is usually where I head first, because that line does get long pretty quickly. Dumbo, Snow White's Enchanted Wish, King Arthur Carousel. I think you could probably put that one at the end of the list. Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and then Casey Jr. Circus Train, and Storybook Land Canal Boats, which I'd say if you're short on time, maybe pick one between Casey Jr. and Storybook Land Canal Boats. And all you Fantasyland purists out there can be mad at me, but they're not the same ride, but they're similar because they wind around each other. Right. So you're going to see kind of the same thing. So it depends if you want to have a little bit more of an exciting little train ride, or you want to have a slow moving boat ride with storytelling. That's your that's your choice. But yeah, I would say if you were short on time, maybe pick one or the other, and then come back to the other one if you have time later in the evening. But
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So one I don't usually recommend starting with Fantasyland is everybody goes to Peter Pan first thing. And you can do that. I've done that. But usually even first thing, because so many people rope drop it, it ends up being like an instant, like 30, 45 minute wait. And you lose all that time to do all those other rides without a wait. So if you do Peter Pan, maybe do it at the end of that list of those, but it's still probably going to be pretty high up there. Usually Touring Plans recommends me do it like more towards like the dinner hour into the but before they close it for, fireworks, or after, when they reopen it after fireworks is usually when I'm recommended to do that. So Yeah, so morning in Fantasyland, do all those slow moving, low capacity rides is what we call them, because they don't have any sort of omni-mover system. It's like they stop and they load like 2 people and then they go, and it just takes forever. So a lot of people that ask me what are their recommendations for lunch. So I thought I'd just throw in, this is not a food episode, but I'll just throw in good places for families to have lunch. Jolly Holiday Bakery is always my favorite. Good. And it's so easily accessed because it's in the hub, so it doesn't matter where land you're in, it's pretty easy to get to. Otherwise, I'd also recommend for kids, I don't love the food at the Hungry Bear 100%. Like I will say I have loved it in the past. Last time I had something there, I did not like it, but they have some things that are okay, and they have some good food for kids. So,
Yeah.
But the seating is exceptional because there's a lot of it in the shade, and one side the Disneyland Railroad goes by, and the other side the Columbia Sailing Ship and the Mark Twain go by. So no matter where you're seated, your kids get to watch these boats go by, which is really fun. So yeah. I recommend it for kids for that reason. Just be aware if you have somebody with some sensory needs that if the Columbia Sailing Ship is running, sometimes they will shoot the cannon over in that area, and it can be a little bit startling. So just to keep that in mind. So those are my recommendations for lunch in Disneyland proper. There's lots of other great places to eat in Disneyland, and Tiana's will be open soon. Hopefully they'll have some really great food for that as well. But for now, that's what I would recommend.
And if you're looking for snacks, we've done several episodes that included food and snacks in all of the parks. So just scroll back in our episode list and find all of our snack suggestions if you're looking for just to kind of snack along the way if you're on the run off to the next ride.
Yeah, we have some really great snacks in Disneyland too. And I did mention if you just want to grab a quick bite but you don't want to do a sit down, I would say Tropical Hideaway or Bengal Barbecue are your best bets for that, and they're both in Adventureland. My kind of favorite hack is to get my food at Bengal Barbecue and then carry it over to Tropical Hideaway. They basically stuffed a place to eat inside an old store in the bazaar area in Adventureland. So it's just it's inside-ish, but it's not the best place.
So what you're saying is it's fine, but
it's fine. But if I wanted a really nice experience of where to eat, I would go and take it over to Tropical Hideaway because you have Rosita there, the bird that talks to you and tells jokes, and the music is top-notch, and they've got tiki torches, and it's just really lovely. So but we'll see once Tiana opens. That might be another place to recommend. I did like the food they used to have there at the French Market, so I'm hopeful we'll have some good food there.
I would hope so too.
Okay, so morning we're in Fantasyland, then we have some lunch. In the afternoon, you're going to do non-Genie Plus rides that don't have super long waits. And this is hard to predict because it depends on the crowd level in the park. Yeah. Sometimes if the crowds are low, Jungle Cruise doesn't necessarily have a super long line all day. If it does have a long line, sometimes if you wait a little while and come back, it'll be short. It's just kind of this weird thing where it kind of fluctuates during the day. Winnie the Pooh also usually doesn't have tremendously long lines unless it's a really busy day. Toontown, with the caveat that not going on any of the rides, is a good place to bum around, especially with littles. It's a good place to explore their new play area that they have there, which is fantastic. They've got
it's really great,
really big slide. They've got this little bridge that makes sounds when you run over it. They have a whole bunch of little things on the ground for them to follow. And then they have inside Goofy's house, there's this whole I want to say it's bubblegum machine. It's has a bunch of little balls that go all over the place. It's fun. So yeah. So I would say head to Toontown to just, get some energy out is a good bet. Toontown notoriously doesn't have very much shade, so keep that in mind. There's also Mickey and Minnie's house. You can walk through Mickey's house without meeting Mickey if it's a huge wait. You don't have to meet Mickey. You can just walk through the house and see all of his stuff. Or you can go and meet the characters as well if that's something your kids really want to do. So Toontown's a good place to go. Also, I would say Tom Sawyer Island is a wonderful place to escape to in the afternoons when the crowds get a little overwhelming, because the kids can really run around and play a whole lot there. There's caves to explore. There's pirate ship theme. It's Pirate Slayer themed, and it's just kind of a nice getaway from the hustle bustle of the parks. So I definitely recommend that. So that's kind of like afternoon time. And remember, your other return times for Genie Plus will be sprinkled in amongst these things. So that wouldn't be all you do in the afternoon. I'd also put in there, I forgot to add, that Enchanted Tiki Room would be perfect for the afternoon. So that never has a wait. I mean, you have to wait till the next show, and that's pretty much it. So that's in Adventureland, and that's a great place to go and cool off to if it's hot outside. Or Lincoln. Yes, thank you, Conductor Jackson. Appreciate that. Yeah, Lincoln, great moments with Mr. Lincoln. That's on Main Street. And I'd also say Main Street vehicles are a great one. They run most of the day in Disneyland. Unlike Disney World, they kind of shut those down for the afternoon. But yeah, anything that's on Main Street, there's a little theater there as well where you can go in and see classic Mickey cartoons. So that's a great place to go and not have a wait. Or ride the Disneyland Railroad. Which is also usually has a little bit of a wait by the afternoon because everybody's tired, but it's a great one with kids to get off your feet. And my kids have often taken naps on there. We'll just, I'll just hold them and we'll ride around, and it's, we stop every so often, but the swaying helps put them to sleep. So.
And I will say something like the train is also helpful if you're trying to manipulate sometimes and move some stuff around. Doing something like the train in the meantime can be helpful so that way you're not just like standing around waiting. So hop on the train. You can do whatever you need while your kiddos are enjoying the ride and looking around. So something like that. I would not suggest doing that in a show just because, screen in the dark room, but something like the train would be perfect for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So then into the evening, I would recommend for the rides that we have left, this is when you would do Pirates of the Caribbean is not a Genie Plus attraction. So I'd never recommend this in the middle of the day because that line can get so long. In Disneyland, it goes out of the queue and then up the ramp and like over it. So if the line goes up on the ramp over it, just wait. It will get shorter eventually. Unless the crowds are really, really bad. That just don't do that because in the evening it will go down. And this is all also, I should mention, this is implying in this itinerary that you're not going to go see fireworks. So taking advantage of those evening times when people are going to go see the night shows, both the fireworks show and World of Color. Some people will hop and go see World of Color in DCA. So this plan does not, neither of these plans includes that. So just FYI. So you might have to pick and choose is all I'm saying. So in the evening, I'd recommend Pirates. This is when you can come back and do Peter Pan's Flight, but only after they've reopened it after fireworks or before they close it. And also ending your day with Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway if you did not get an individual lightning lane. So I'm going to breathe for a second. That's a lot of information.
Yeah, because I had a couple questions that I was hanging on to that people were asking about. The first question we had over here was wondering about if the Disney World and Disneyland app are the same. Are two separate? They essentially function the same way. There's little tiny differences between the two and like where you might find something between the two, but both are going to give you wait times. Both are going to be how you do all of your Genie Plus. You're going to be able to mobile order. All of that is available on both. So if you're familiar with the Disney World app, the Disneyland app is super easy to use as far as that's concerned.
Hope's asking which two apps. So we have Walt Disney World Resort has an app, and then Disneyland Resort has its own app. So they're two different apps. They look similar, though when you open them up, they have similar features to them. So if you're familiar with one, you'll probably understand the other one fairly easily.
Yeah, and keep in mind the Disney World app is going to show up as My Disney Experience, which is unfortunate because the word world doesn't exist in that title, which is why a lot of people get confused because they just assume it's all Disney.
Yeah.
It's not. So My Disney Experience is your Disney World app for everything you need in Disney World. And then the Disneyland app is just called the Disneyland app, which is very helpful.
Yeah, that's true.
So those are going to be the ones that we're talking about now. Kate also did mention earlier the Touring Plans app, which is a separate third party.
Keeps me more apps. All the apps.
And that one is the one that Kate was talking about, that you can utilize the computer and the app to kind of help with your itinerary. So those are the apps that we've been mentioning.
Yeah.
The other question that I had, and Kate, I'm not 100% sure, but someone was asking if the Peter Pan ride is identical in Disneyland and Disney World.
That's a great question. It is not identical. It's a little bit longer in Disney World. It has a longer Neverland scene that you actually fly over Neverland in, like, more close up, I would say. Disneyland flies over Neverland from, like, you're up in the sky and there's all these stars around, which makes it actually really magical. And, they did import the same scene with the boat, the Jolly Roger, the boat, the pirate ship, Jolly Roger. At the end, they put that scene. It originally was in Disney World, and then when they did the 1983 remodel, they added it to Disneyland. So it'll look really similar, but Disneyland's had some additional updates where there's extra pixie dust through things. So they're not identical. Disney World's a little bit longer. If you haven't been on the Disneyland version, I'd recommend you do it because it's different. Mainly for that flying over the Neverland scene with all the stars is actually pretty magical. So,
and I will say, I know if you're not that anyone asked about the queue, but the queues are also vastly different.
Yes,
So
for sure.
if that's something that, like, if you're someone who loves the Disney World queue with all the little, like, lights and Tinkerbell flying around and all that, that is not what they have at Disneyland. It's very different.
They do have a little scavenger hunt. So if you use the Disney Play app with your kids, they have these little things that are in the wood everywhere. Yeah, another app. They have all these different little things that are hidden throughout the queues that the kids can look for in the app. So, and you can even do it without the app, just seeing how many items you can find, because they had to do something for kids in that line because it's just really boring. But if you use your Disney Play app, that's also how you can get the lantern with Tinkerbell to light up that's in the queue. A lot of people don't realize what that is, and I see people trying to, like, push buttons and stuff on it. I was like, you have to use your Disney Play app to make it work. So I have a couple of questions over here. Is Rise identical in both? And the answer is pretty much yes. Like, the ride experience is identical. You'll sometimes when I go to Galaxy, not Guardians of the Galaxy, sometimes when I go to Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland, I literally think I'm in Florida because it's so similar. So, are magic bands needed in land? They're not needed. A lot of people do not use them. They have special readers on their magic band. They're where you scan your magic band. They have a little slot in it that you can actually stick your phone in, and it will scan your park ticket in your app. To get you and use you, not get you. Wow, I can't talk. I've been talking a lot. It will allow you access to that area as if you had a Magic Band. However, you can use Magic Band Plus, the ones that light up. You can use those at Disneyland, and you can use the same one at Disney World. You just have to make sure they're registered in your app. So you can't use the older versions that don't light up. They don't work at Disneyland. But if you register the ones that light up, you can actually use those ones at Disneyland. And I have enjoyed using mine there when I use Genie Plus because it's convenient. But you don't have to use it.
I would say if you're using Genie Plus, you definitely want to either have a Magic Band Plus or have your phone set up to be ready to go. Don't try to mess with a card or anything like that, because it's just too much in and out, especially if you're doing just one day and you're hustling between these rides. You want to make sure that whatever you have is easily accessible. I will also mention that I know several of us have used like Apple Watches for Magic Bands before. That is not an option at Disneyland currently. Hopefully it will be at some point, but so for those of you that maybe have used your Apple Watch or smartwatch as your park ticket at World, that's not something you can do at Land.
And I do have a question from Tracy saying that they're, what is the best hotel? We did a whole series on the best hotels in the Disney parks, and we included Disneyland in that. But I always recommend, if you're staying on property, I recommend California, Grand Californian is my favorite to stay on property. Staying off property, I recommend almost anything on Harbor Boulevard is usually pretty good, which is the road that runs like parallel to Disneyland Resort. Most of them have been renovated motels, so they're not like super fancy necessarily, but they're quality, clean stays, which is what you need. And the Howard Johnson's always a really popular one with kids too, because they have a little water park that's attached to it. So
Yeah, and if you're looking for more about that, we did several episodes based on budget. So we did kind of like value prices, moderate prices, and deluxe prices. So those are episodes 6, 7, 6, 8, 9, and 10. I was like, wait, that wasn't right. So 6, 8, 9, and 10 are the ones that you're looking for if you want more information about hotels based on your budget. And like Kate said, it's Disney World and Land in the same episode, so you can fast forward and rewind as needed.
Yeah. I think my biggest advice with that is if you're staying with kids, try to stay closer to the Harbor Boulevard entrance to the parks because you'll walk less. At the end of the day, walking less is great for everybody. So just saying. Yes. So do you have any more questions or should we move on?
I think I'm good on my end.
Okay. So let's do a Disneyland day if you're not going to buy Genie Plus. I will say that if you're not going to buy Genie Plus, you're going to get less done in your day, just full stop, unless the parks are virtually empty, which it just like never is anymore. So
right.
Again, I'm going to recommend you get there first thing in the morning, arrive at least 40 minutes before park opening so that you can rope drop, which if you're not familiar with that term means they kind of have a rope. They have a section where you're standing behind waiting for them to open that section. That's why we call it rope drop. I would recommend you head for Rise of Resistance first, if that's something that is a huge priority for you, but only if it's a huge priority for you. Don't do it if you're like, I could take or leave it. I'm not into Star Wars or whatever. Just don't, because it will take a significant amount of your time. And it's going to look like the line is ridiculously long when you get there. Like, I think we had to go in like the third entrance is where the line stretched to. So it was basically the length of the Galaxy's Edge. And, it's going to seem like this is crazy. It's going to take forever. But in the morning, it actually moves. As long as it's running, it will move pretty quickly. I know it takes a while to warm up and sometimes it doesn't always work right. It's just a complicated ride.
And that's the same on both coasts.
But if it is up and running and working, get in that line. It will probably be, depending on the day, 50-ish minutes, maybe less than an hour. And then you're going to do, after that, you can then go do those Fantasyland slow loading rides. Because even if it takes you an hour, but you got there right when the park opened, you can still hit a lot of those Fantasyland rides while the wait times are low. So I would again do the same thing, Alice and the Elephant Ride and Snow White's Enchanted Wish and Matterhorn. I'm going to throw that in because that was one that was a Genie Plus attraction. You can ride the Matterhorn with Rider Switch if you have littles that don't measure up or too scared to ride because it's a roller coaster. Rider Switch we've talked about before, but essentially you can go approach the cast member who's at the front and say we want to do Rider Switch, and usually each ride I feel like has a different way of doing it, but sometimes they'll give you like a physical pass, and then once that person is through, then you can switch your child. The other person stays with the child, and this person usually can have at least one other person come with them. Sometimes it's been up to 3 in the past. Sometimes it changes. Sometimes it says on your pass how many people it will admit. So, I hate to be so vague about it, but it just really depends on the attraction, the park. So just ask a cast member if you don't know how to do it or don't know. Just go to the front of the attraction and say, we would like to do Rider Switch. Is that possible? And then they'll help walk you through it. So yeah, easy peasy.
And just a quick note about Rider Switch. I know we're talking non-Genie Plus, but if you are using Rider Switch with Genie Plus, I would suggest talking to the cast member about, especially on a day where you only have one day in the park, about making sure that everybody taps in before you get your rider swap, which sounds a little crazy, but everyone on your party is going to have to tap in or, use your phone, whatever you're doing it, to the ride before you're going to be eligible to book your next one. So make sure that you talk to the cast member if you're using Genie Plus and Rider Switch, because you want to make sure that you're not stuck waiting on 2 cycles of that queue before you can book your next ride. Yeah, so keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. I didn't even think about that because I haven't had to use Rider Switch in a long time.
Yeah.
So
and I haven't either, but someone asked me that question, and like our friend tour guide Barbie and I were like discussing it the other day about, but it's because I was wondering whether or not Ride or Switch had anything to do with it, but they're completely separate systems. So you want to make sure that even if you're using Genie Plus, I would still do the Ride or Switch because it's going to let you book your next lightning lane faster.
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense.
No, that totally made sense to me.
I know it's a
Hopefully it
lot,
makes sense to
and
everybody.
you know, I'm thinking back in our Genie Plus episode, there were too many other things to talk about when it comes to Genie Plus.
There.
So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. Okay, so you're doing your Fantasyland rides. We got to the Matterhorn. And I'll put in this caveat that, like, if nobody wants to do these big rides, just skip them, you know, go to the next thing. If you're not interested in any of these rides, you're probably going to have to pick and choose which one of these you want to do anyway, because you will not get to everything in the park. So as always, we recommend everybody says, what is it you want to do the most, and make your list of like your priorities, and then take those out of each of these sections of the day and be like, we're going to try to get to these ones. And then anything else is just bonus beyond that. So, all right. The Carousel, Mr. Toad, Casey Jr.'s, or Storybook Land Canal Boats. Again, pick one because they're pretty much very similar attractions because of what you see. And then Small World is another one I'm going to recommend for the morning, before those lines do tend to get long in the afternoon. They do go down again in the evening, but there's a whole bunch of other rides I recommend for the evening. So I'm kind of putting it in the morning side for that reason. This was, of course, that we started in Fantasyland. This was after Rise. I kind of put Indiana Jones here, but I'm going to tell you, if you don't do Indiana Jones, like first thing in the day or kind of last thing at night, it's just going to have a long wait. It just will. So just accept it. If you use the Touring Plans app to see when they recommend you should ride, because some days it makes sense to do it at different times. So I will just say that, because even doing it in the afternoon, it's going to have a really long wait. I just was like, I don't even know where to put this, because if you're going to Fantasyland in the morning, I tried to do it that was more family friendly, and not all kids want to go in Indiana Jones. My kids are still a little bit terrified of it. So that's why I put in the afternoon, in case you wanted to do that. And same with Jungle Cruise, like we talked about before, its weights can kind of go up and down, and depending on the day. So I put it in the afternoon, but that one might also be one you need to come back to later. I'd also put Big Thunder Mountain Railroad in the afternoon, and Smuggler's Run as well. These you're just going to have to probably pick your favorite out of some of these, because the waits will be a little bit longer. Then the same ones I recommended before, Winnie the Pooh, Toontown. This is where I would do Mad Tea Party, because it doesn't have a long wait most of the day. Sometimes it can get a little longer in the afternoons, but I think you can still probably do it then. Pinocchio, Tom Sawyer Island, Enchanted Tiki Room, the Mark Twain and Columbia sailing ship. So those are great afternoon activities that don't have waits, except for waiting for the boat to come around. Great moments with Mr. Lincoln, Main Street Vehicles, and also, if they're running, the Davy Crockett Explorer canoes, which is a little controversial because some people refuse to go in them. But they're so unique because you get right down on the water and you see the rivers of America from a really different point of view, and it doesn't run on a track.
It's a little terrifying. I'm not gonna lie. The thought of being in a canoe and being kind of at the mercy of the other people in the canoe with you.
Even if nobody goes in the canoe, those two cast members they have there are so strong, they'll literally pull you through the water if nobody else paddles. And everybody does, because they feel bad. Right. So, yeah, what's wrong with the canoes is a lot of people just refuse to go on them because you have to work. It actually is a canoe. It's free floating. It's a self-powered ride. So you have to canoe and paddle your way through the rivers of America. It's actually quite fun to do, and they tell hilarious jokes. It's like the Jungle Cruise, but with canoes. So it's very funny. If you get somebody in front of you, especially like sometimes a little kid, you'll get a little bit wet because they'll splash you with the water from the rivers of America. So it's not everybody's favorite ride for that reason, but I like the canoes. I will stand it every time. So
I'll stand on the shore and enjoy everyone else enjoying the canoes.
It is fun to watch them struggle though as they come around, because everybody's tired at like halfway through and nobody wants to go any further.
Right. Especially like in the middle of the afternoon or towards the evening, which is where you have them right before dinner on our plan here, Kate. I'm not canoeing it right before dinner. I am ready for a break.
Well, I have it like when the sun is starting to wane, so you're not in the
Okay.
bright sun. You
But
don't want to
still.
do it like high noon. So I didn't put it like right after lunch because nobody wants to do it right after lunch. So you do it when it's a workout.
Yeah, I have several people on my side of the chat that are like, nope, no thanks.
But it was there from 1955, I believe. I have to go back and double check, but it's been there for a long time. It was originally had a different name before it became Davy Crockett Explorer Canoes, and it used to have like a whole section that had rapids in it that you would go through, which was kind of cool. And I know like fake rapids, like not real ones. They don't have it anymore. It's fine.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, then it is time for dinner. Again, I recommend the same places. I do also, there's a couple places with reservations. I also recommend if you can get a reservation. Sometimes you can do a day of walk up. I like Cafe Orleans is a great one. Even my kids found stuff that they like to eat there. And then, gosh, there's a couple other places. I'd say Carnation Cafe over on Main Street is a classic. That was one that Walt really enjoyed. So they have some of his favorite dishes there. That's a great place to eat. And Plaza Inn is always kind of a winner too. They've got really great fried chicken and stuff. So, but I always go back to, kind of the same old places because that's what I'm used to. I don't recommend the Red Rose Tavern. I wanted to say Pinocchio Village House. That's what it used to be. The Red Rose Tavern, it is family friendly. So if you like flatbread and things like that, it's like Pinocchio Village House. It's got a similar menu, except it has the gray stuff and stuff like that. But it's probably not one of my favorite places to eat as an adult. I've eaten there several times and I'm always kind of sad when I eat there. So, but it's air conditioned and indoors. So,
But I feel like you've got so many better options. Like, don't settle for it.
I know, not at
especially at
Disneyland.
Disneyland.
Don't settle, friends. Yeah. And then there's also Blue Bayou if you really want to splurge and you can get into it. Usually, if you don't have a reservation, go to Blue Bayou first thing in the morning and try to see if you can get a walk up for that day. That's your best bet for trying to get a reservation at Blue Bayou. And that is the restaurant that is inside Pirates of the Caribbean. So you're floating by in a boat and you're seeing all the people eating next to you. It's like perpetual twilight, and it's actually quite wonderful place to eat. The food is not as good as it used to be, but the atmosphere is top notch. So that's another place you could eat. Finishing up things to do in the evening, I will say, I don't know, I put Indiana Jones here too because I was like, I don't know where to stick Indiana Jones. So, but definitely once everybody starts going over for fireworks, and wait times usually drop pretty drastically during that time. So that is a time they're not that far from each other. You can knock out both of those. It's also a good time in the evening to do Autopia if your kids really want to do that or you really want to do that, because there's a lot less waiting and a lot less standing in the sun because a lot of that, it's just hot to stand in line for that. Another good time to do Star Tours. Space Mountain is still pretty long at this time of day, but sometimes it gets a little lower when everybody goes to the shows. There's Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters. That has a pretty long line in the afternoon, but once everybody starts heading into Firework Land, those wait times can drop really low. So, and this is also when you can do Peter Pan's Flight. Again, be mindful that it closes for fireworks. And same with Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin, because it's in Toontown. And then Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, I kind of like close out the day with that if I was doing it. It's a great ride to close out the day with, saying Chubby. So
I know. He's the last little character you see as you exit. My little buddy.
I know that was a lot of information for Disneyland. So if my best advice for a Disneyland strategy is do Fantasyland first, do rides that don't have much of a wait in the afternoon, do everything else kind of at the end of the day. That's kind of like Fantasyland, no waits, everything else at the end of it. That's it. And it's a long day. So again, choose what you like to do for that. And there are some single rider attractions at Disneyland. I feel like the space one went away. Someone's saying single rider for space. I don't remember the Space Mountain one being open because I feel like that one disappeared. But we used to have one for Splash as well. Just always remember, if you go in the single rider line, they're going to split up your party.
Yes.
And also Matterhorn is a great one for single rider. Like I do that single
Yeah,
rider all the
Smuggler's
time.
Run, Matterhorn, and Space Mountain are the three for Disneyland that have single rider options.
Thank you, Jackie. So, yeah, I would say last time I was on Matterhorn, like the people that were in the single rider line, they're just like, but we want to stay together. He's my son. And they're just like, the cast members, like, you could tell it was like barely contained rage. And I'm like, he's like, I'm sorry, it's the single rider line.
Single rider line. Yep.
It's
so
like
like
an hour and a half wait if you want to
Right.
ride together.
right. And like you're welcome. You can wait in line with them, but when you get to the front, you may get lucky 1 in 25 chances that you end up in the same car, but
Yeah, it's not usually. That's not how
chances
that
are
works.
not that great.
So if you need to ride with your kiddo, don't go in the single rider line. That's all. Get off my soapbox.
Yeah, and also keep in mind that they have age restrictions for some of that stuff too. So
yes.
single riders, I think it's like 12 or 13, but I could be wrong. I would have to.
Yeah, I don't know offhand because I've never tried it. So yeah, that's my main strategy for Disneyland. And Disneyland, again, you're just pick and choose what it is you want to do the most, and don't try to do it all because, especially with kids, it's too much. I try to do as many rides as I could in a day just to get footage the other day, and I was worn out, and I still didn't get to everything. I got to most of it, but not all of it. It's just a lot.
The internet is saying guests under the age of 7 may not ride alone and should be accompanied by a person age 14 or older. Oh, that's not for sure, but I would say 14 and up then for like single rider if you're worried about.
Yeah, I think they
Yeah,
do let
I
like
think
8
14.
though. Like 8-year-olds can ride by themselves, from what I know. I always
That's
thought 8
what-
was really low, so 14 sounds great to me. But yeah, while you look that up, I'm gonna hop on over to DCA. That is Disney California Adventure. No S. And I have a few general park notes for DCA. Okay, wait. Conductor Jackson says if the child is at least 7 years old, they can ride on their own. That's what I thought. So they have to be like, if they're under 7, they can't ride on their own. That's what I'm thinking too. So
Yeah, so I guess if they're 8 and older, they would be able to.
I know, as a mom, I'm like,
I don't think so.
I guess it depends on your child. There's some really mature 8-year-olds out there.
Yeah, well, and not only that, but like those rides that have single rider are not tame rides. Smuggler's Run, the Matterhorn, and Space Mountain. So like if your 8-year-old can handle being on that attraction, let alone being alone without a family member on that attraction, that's a big if.
I don't know. For me, it's like for me personally, as a mom, I just don't feel comfortable having my child around, like riding with potential strangers next to them on some of these attractions, especially like Space Mountain. You're physically next to somebody, and you just don't know who that person is, and they're in the dark. I'm like, I just can't.
Yeah.
I would not. No, not for me. But every parent is different, and no judgment. But that being said,
Know your kiddo.
yeah, and no judgment. Every kiddo is different. Every family is different. Every parenting situation is different. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, it does depend. Like Kathy's saying, her as an 8-year-old, yes. Her daughter's an 8-year-old, no. Times are different. Yeah, I would agree to that too.
Yeah, and Allie Beth said over here, better safe than sorry. And that's exactly it. Like as a parent taking your kid, you really have to decide. You're in a very busy public place. Is it something that you're okay with or not?
Well, and then I also think about my 8-year-old getting off the ride potentially. Like I would probably have to go first, and then they would have to go behind me because I'd want to be there to kind of like catch them afterwards. Otherwise, they're waiting for me alone in the park.
Right.
I was like, I don't feel comfortable with that. I mean, when it comes to like my 12, 13-year-old, like that's a different story. 8, I think, is still pretty young. So
Yeah.
depends. Anyway, real mom talk there for a minute.
Sorry.
You can what you can do. It's all your personal. Those are the official park rules. You do you and your family and what works for you. So we'll say that. Disney California Adventure. Let's head over there. This park is so much easier to do in a day, and it used to be like a half-day park, but they've added so many things to it that now it really is a full-day adventure if you want to get to most of the things that are in it. Again, the same rules apply as Disneyland. Get there early because it gets progressively busier as the day goes on. And I'd say sometimes this park gets even a little bit more busy because a lot of the locals go there for eating and atmosphere and things like that in the evenings for dinner. If you want to watch World of Color, which is the big old water show that they have, which I recommend if you've never seen it before, be sure you see World of Color. And I really love Cosmic, but World of Color is really spectacular. So go see that. You can get a free virtual queue for World of Color at noon. So that is in your app. If you're familiar with virtual queues.
So basically what the virtual queue does is exactly what it sounds like. It virtually holds your place in line, and it helps you be able to guarantee an entry to whatever it is that you're looking for. Most of the time, I shouldn't say most of the time, a lot of the time virtual queue rides do not have standby. But like World of Color is a little bit of a different beast just because it's a show versus like a specific attraction. But basically, you're going to go on your app a couple different ways you can find it. You can find it just on the homepage of your app. If you scroll down, it'll give you that option. You can also find it on your tip board if you're using Genie Plus. But basically, you just go in, get your party all situated in the app, make sure everybody's included. And then Kate and I have talked about kind of the tip and trick of doing this. Check your internet speed, make sure you've got good internet speed. And then basically using like a world clock, double check your timing. And then for the, 15 to 20, 30 seconds before it hits, just start tapping the refresh button. It'll automatically turn into the join queue button and you just keep tapping and tapping and don't stop. And then it'll eventually kick you a somewhat randomized, somewhat the sooner you're in, the lower number you get for your group number. And then in the app, they will call your group number when it is your turn to enter either the queue, if it were to be a ride, or the seating area that they have blocked, or standing area that they have blocked off for World of Color.
Yeah, it's like color coded. So they'll give you a show and they'll give you like a color and then you go to that section and get out.
For World of Color, you don't have to use the virtual queue. It's not something where like if you don't use the virtual queue, you're not going to get in. Like if you think of virtual queues for like Cosmic Rewind or Tron at Disney World. So it's not the same as that, but it just gives you like early entry in specific areas that you're going to be allowed to stand in.
Yeah, it gives you a better view of the show, from more of a front-facing area. So I would definitely recommend having it if you've never seen World of Color. If World of Color is not a priority, oftentimes you can watch from some areas around the lagoon anyway and still see a big portion of it. So don't stress if you forgot and it's closed or whatever. But it is a nice thing to have if you've never seen it before. So noon, World of Color. And I think if you are a park hopper, I think you can still book that from Disneyland.
When we looked up virtual queues, yes, you are able to book from either park as long as you have, if you're in Disneyland, as long as you have a park hopper, you'll be eligible to book it on the app.
Yeah, so you don't have to physically walk over to California Adventure. You just have to be checked into one of the parks by noon.
You have to be in the parks to book that one. So it's not something you can book from your resort or from standing outside the gates. You have to be physically tapped into the parks.
Yes. And also a note, just like Disneyland has the areas that close for fireworks, the same is true for Disney World, for California Adventure. California Adventure, the Pixar Pier area, not all of the attractions close, but a majority of them close 1 hour before the first World of Color show. Don't wait till the end of the day to ride the Incredicoaster. You're going to be very sad because it's closed. And also the Silly Swings, the Golden Zephyr, which I don't know who's riding that anyway, and the Pixar Pal Around, which is the big Ferris wheel. And I got some mixed reviews because I was trying to figure out if I just never go in there that time of night because I'm everything's probably closed anyway. But Midway Mania may or may not be open. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. If anybody is a California person and they know it's for sure open during that time, because I always thought all of that stuff closed, but
right.
What is the Golden Zephyr? Okay, so those of you who are not familiar, I'm going to say this quickly. So the California Adventure was like Michael Eisner Park, right? And they did it on a severe budget. It was like ridiculous budget when it first opened, compared to what they were building overseas with like Tokyo, Disney, and whatnot. The Imagineering team that had to work for California Adventure really didn't have any money to work with, and they were encouraged to basically save as much as possible. So they bought a lot of kind of like off the shelf rides for this, which is so opposite of what Walt Disney wanted. So they made this like midway area, and they have the silly symphony swings, which was used to be like a giant orange, and now it's more like the silly symphony swings with like Mickey, conducting a band. But they had one of the rides they got was called the Golden Zephyr. And so it's like these almost like spaceship looking things that are on wires. And then when it spins around, they like lift up. Jackie's going to give us some visual aids. They lift off the ground and they swing around. Okay. So this is not, and if there's the lightest breeze, like a tiny breeze, they will not operate like at all. Literally just swinging around. It's not anything. So it's not anything to spend your time on unless there's literally nothing else to do. I've gone on it once, and I was like, once was enough for me for my lifetime. So yeah. It's up to you if you want to experience the Golden Zephyr, but it does close during World of Color. Yeah. Thanks, Jackie, for the
better visual. Because I was even like, I don't know that I know what that is even.
It's like Astro Orbiter, but slow and with a giant boatload of people. So it's not exciting. It's just, and apparently it's very expensive to maintain because like the cables and stuff that are on it, like are only from one company or something. That's what I've heard. It's all, I don't know if it's 100%, but that's what I've heard. So,
Becca Bella wrote over here, Golden Zephyr is thumbs down.
And they also have like the jumping jellyfish and stuff over there, which like I think Jackie and I were talking about this the other day, is similar to an attraction they have in Disneyland Paris. And I was like, nope, I've been on that. I'm good. I don't need to go on that again. So,
yep, sounds about right.
So Conductor Jackson says some of the attractions on certain days will stay open during World of Color, to his knowledge. And that's what I've heard too. That's what I've researched. Like, I'm pretty sure the Incredicoaster, there's a couple times I've seen that they have tried running it during World of Color, but it's almost always closed. So just don't depend on it being open. Yeah. The other thing is, under my general park notes for this one, is Radiator Springs Racers is a nightmare now for standby with the whole Lightning Lane Genie Plus situation. It just is awful. So my personal story, my tale of woe, if you will, is me with my little 6-year-old at the time, and she really wanted to ride it, and we wanted to ride it together. But so I was like, okay, we're gonna tough it out and do standby. We got in, and it was 45 minutes, and I was like, I can do 45 minutes. I can tough it out. It's fine. And then as we stood in line, they said, your wait is now an hour because we're prioritizing lightning lanes. It's now an hour and a half. It went up to 225-minute wait. Wow. And our line literally stopped moving for like a half hour. And my daughter started to cry. She was like, I'm tired. I don't want to stand anymore. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. And it was so sad. It was the saddest moment for her. And of course we did, and we went and did something else that was fun. She never got to go on it that trip, because that's what happens with that ride, is that if they prioritize individual lightning lanes, and they will always do that because they need to. So if you don't want to pay to go on that, and you don't want your sad children like mine, sometimes you can hit it the right time of day and you'll be fine. But that was my story, and I don't ever want to relive it. And I don't want you guys to relive it. So my recommendation is wait until the end of the night, right before the park closes. Get in the line then, because no other individual lightning lanes can then enter the queue after that, and it will move very quickly. And the cast members want to go home, so they want to get you through the line. So everything moves really fast at the end of the night. And this was Radiator Springs Racers, for those of you who are asking. So Radiator Springs Racers is the big e-ticket attraction that's in Radiator Springs, and it's amazing. You don't want to miss it. It's one of my favorite Disney rides, and it tells the whole story of cars, and it has a dark element to it, and then it has a race at the end that's kind of like Test Track. It's amazing. So you definitely don't want to miss that, but ride at park close. All right. So another one of my park notes before I jump into our with Genie Plus itinerary, I would say one of my favorite traditions that most people don't know about if they're not Disneyland people is the Radiator Springs lighting ceremony that happens at sunset. So head on over to Radiator Springs. You can look up, just Google what time sunset is, and it happens within a couple of minutes of sunset. And they play Shaboom, Life Could Be a Dream, and the cast members dance with little flags, and they have bubbles, and all the lights will progressively come on, starting at the end of the street and moving down. All the neon lights come on, and sometimes you see couples dancing together, and kids are dancing, and it's just like little Disney magic that doesn't cost anything extra, and everybody's in it together. And to me, that's so special, and just kind of disappearing in the parks a little bit. So I love that it's still there.
That's all I got. I don't know the words to that song.
Thanks, Jackie, for that. And but it's a wonderful time too. You can grab a little snack at the Cozy Cone if you want, and just chill out and wait for the lights to come on. And to our family, it's always been a tradition, and it's really special. So I recommend that.
Rick says do they theme it for the holidays too?
I haven't been at that ceremony in the holidays, but they could. The whole land is themed for the holidays, for sure.
They theme it for the holidays.
The holidays, it's fabulous. The decor there is amazing. It's all Cars themed, and it's fantastic, both for spooky season and for Christmas. So, it depends on when you go. Okay, that's enough of my general park notes. Moving on. So with Genie Plus, let's do Genie Plus first. However, a lot of these rides are for, not all of them, but a lot of them are for older kids. So keep that in mind as you're booking that. Wait to book your first Lightning Lane until the return windows are about 30 minutes after park opening. So that gives you the ability to do some attractions that are exclusively via standby lines for the first 90 minutes or so that California Adventure is open. So you don't immediately have to use your Lightning Lane. You can instead kind of just like wait a little bit. You can hit some rides while the wait times are low in regular standby lines, and then start booking your Lightning Lanes. So I recommend that.
I will say though, book and modify.
Book and modify, yes.
Because again, if you're trying to get as much in as you possibly can in a day, book it as soon as you can, and then just modify it out.
That's smart.
Maybe 10 minutes later, look and modify it out a little bit. Because again, it could possibly affect when you're booking your next one. That early in the morning, it may or may not. If you're getting a time that's within that 2-hour window, which we've talked all about in our Genie Plus episode, but just my 2 cents. I always say book and then modify rather than waiting.
That is smart. Thank you, Jackie. I'm going to do that next time. Also, this is when you could get an individual Lightning Lane. Is only available for Radiator Springs racers. So if you don't want to deal with the nightmare that is Radiator Springs and you don't want to wait till the end of the day, then you can, buy that first thing in the morning and get that one. Then you should be able to get all the Genie Plus rides pretty easily. So right when you get into the park, if you're going to buy Radiator Springs racers, do that first, then book your first Lightning Lane. And here is the order which you should book based on how fast they disappear during the day. Guardians of the Galaxy, Web Slingers, A Spider-Man Adventure, Toy Story Midway Mania, Soarin' Around the World, Monsters, Inc., Grizzly River Run, Goofy Sky School, and then Incredicoaster. So that's the order.
That's fascinating to me. Being someone who doesn't know a ton about Disneyland and DCA and all of that, it's interesting to me, the order of that.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with capacity. So, yeah.
Right.
And
load time and all that good stuff. So.
And a lot of people don't. That's not true. Midway Mania is all the way in the back of the park too. So it's kind of like but it goes really fast. I was going to say Incredicoaster is all the way in the back of the park, but because it has such high capacity, it doesn't run out nearly as fast as the other ones. So that's why it's at the end. But Guardians goes pretty quickly, especially when it's themed for holidays. So keep that in mind. And Web Slingers used to be an individual Lightning Lane, and they changed it to just a Lightning Lane. So it's kind of a popular one. If you choose to not purchase your individual Lightning Lane for Radiator Springs Racers, you could go there first, or otherwise start at Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. If you've got small kids and they're not going to like a Tower of Terror-esque ride where there's drops in it, then go for Radiator Springs Racers first. If you're just like, I just don't want to do that and risk like having a lot of lines, again, you can do that at the end of the day. So I kind of like waffle back and forth about what I recommend for Radiator Springs Racers because I'm a little bit bitter about it now. I love the ride, so. But it makes me sad, so it is what it is. So then I would do the, after that, I would do the non-Genie Plus attractions in this order, interspersed, of course, with your Genie Plus attractions. Jamboree, which is Rollickin' Roadsters, the Pixar Pal Around, especially if you're doing the non-swinging, because that line does get long. They have swinging cars that are terrifying, and then they have non-swinging, which are great. Just personal preference. Some people really love the swinging ones, but they make me sick. But then The Little Mermaid, Ariel's Undersea Adventure, Redwood Creek Challenge Trail, Mickey's PhilharMagic, World of Color with the virtual queue, and then Radiator Springs Racers at the end. So if you have not got an individual Lightning Lane by that point. So those of you who are not familiar with California Adventure, Redwood Creek Challenge Trail, you literally could do any time of the day because it is basically like a playground for kids to run around and enjoy. And a lot of parents will run around with them. My kids are finally old enough that I'm kind of like, just stay in this general area. I'll be right here on this bench. And it's great. So it's good times with that. But we've chased our kids for many years around Redwood Creek Challenge Trail.
Oh, I'm sure. And I will mention too, and I should have maybe mentioned this at the beginning when we started talking about this, anytime you're utilizing Genie Plus, these lists are a great starting point. By no means are they an end-all be-all starting point. And here's the thing that I like to kind of stress to people. Do not go cross park to back cross park to back cross, just to follow this order. There's something to be said about being aware of your surroundings and what's closest to you and kind of tweaking and manipulating it to that extent.
Sure.
Especially when if you're, let's say you booked Guardians of the Galaxy is your first ride, but you're going to Mater's first to rope drop, it's a lot of back and forth. So just kind of look locationally where everything is. That can be said at Disneyland as well with what we talked about earlier. Look to see where things are before you get dead set on your plan.
Yeah, it's not as critical at Disneyland because everything's so close together. It really is not as important. Right. But I would agree there are some that are like, this is all the way on the other side of the park and this is over here, and you don't want to be running back and forth because they'll just get exhausted. So that I do recommend touring plans for that because they'll take into account like walking distance and like things that are near each other and try to group them together while trying to minimize your weight as well, which I think is important. So
yes, absolutely.
And May's asking what Goofy Sky School is. That is a Mad Mouse type roller coaster that's outdoors that is themed like Goofy doesn't know how, he's like teaching you how to fly, I think, but it's like Goofy teaching you how to fly, and so he like runs into stuff. It's really, if you have a fear of heights, it's not one I'd recommend. There's very small, you like get in this little thing and there's like a safety bar, but it feels like you're going to fly off the edge of things when you go around and you're really high up in the air. Yeah, a wild mouse coaster is kind of like where you would think like a mouse goes here and then he turns around really quick and then goes over here, and then it kind of goes back and forth in like a U, and it's in a really compact space. So those were around, really popular in amusement parks for many, many, many years. So it's an old style kind of coaster. And I would say Space Mountain is like a modified Mad Mouse coaster. It's just like, it's a little bit different of a design, but it's the same kind of concept. It's like out and back. So that's what I would recommend for doing those non-Genie Plus attractions. So like I said, that's pretty much all there is there. So you're going to do the Genie Plus ones interspersed with the other ones. And that's your day. And it really, you can get pretty much all of it done in a day. It's not that big of a park. But if you're booking without Genie Plus, I would recommend bookending your day with Web Slingers on one side and Radiator Springs Racers at the end. So those are like the big ones. Then I would do probably web slingers first. This is the morning. Web slingers, then potentially Soarin', then Mater's Junkyard Jamboree, Luigi's Rollickin' Roadsters, the Pixar Pal Around, Toy Story Midway Mania, and then the Incredicoaster for your morning. If you're going to eat lunch in the park, I'd recommend Pim's Test Kitchen is probably my favorite restaurant there. But with kids, I love to sit at Flo's V8 Cafe, but go sit, as long as it's not too hot, go sit in the back of it. Most people don't even know there's seating back there. In the very back of the cafe, you can exit. There's a door. You can go out, sit in the back because you can watch all the cars from Radiator Springs Racers roll by. And it's just really fun to watch the cars go by, and it's beautiful out there. So I love sitting there personally.
Is it loud? Like, I think of like if I were to sit outside of Test Track is really loud. Is that one?
No.
Okay.
No, I know what you mean.
Just curious for my own, like,
scary loud.
Yeah, because like again, you talk about sensory needs, like loud sounds are my kiddos' biggest sensory issues when we're in the parks. So it's like, oh, I would love to do that, but wait, I need to make sure.
Yeah, no, it's not like Test Track. Test Track is super loud. And also there's like a road in between you and the track, so you're actually pretty far from it. It's not that loud. It's kind of like a car driving fast 2 blocks away, I think I would say was what you hear.
Like literally, my kids have stood outside of Test Track, heard it, and then said, I don't want to go on that.
I don't blame them. It's loud. But the only thing that's loud there is they have metal chairs, and sometimes people scrape them on the ground. So I would say like that's the worst part sensory wise of that. And if you're at the wrong time of the year, the trees do drop stuff on you, but they have an overhang part where you're not under the trees. So just choose your seating wisely based on what the trees are doing.
Some extra greenery in your food, you know.
It literally went in my milkshake this last time. I was like, okay, maybe not right there. So
sad day.
The food at Flo's V8 Cafe used to be a whole lot better than it is. They changed their menu and it's not as good, but it's still like good family food where most people will find something they like to eat. So I recommend it for families for that. After lunch, I would recommend the things, again, that like just don't have much of a wait, right? So we're going to do Little Mermaid, Ariel's Undersea Adventure, Redwood Creek Challenge Trail, Mickey's PhilharMagic, which is, a lot of people don't even know it's there, but it's there, I promise. Monsters Inc. can still have a wait. I will say this with like an asterisk. That one can get really long if there's a lot of Lightning Lane people cutting in front of you. So that's another one where your wait can go way up. If you feel like the line is really long for that, come back later in the evening because it's just not worth it to wait for that one for a really long time. You can also do the Animation Academy is available. And then that's a great place to go. And then the Sorcerer's Workshop is in there as well. And Turtle Talk with Crush. So there's a couple of activities that are low weight and also indoors if you need to get out of the heat. So after dinner, it's good times to do Guardians of the Galaxy and Radiator Springs Racers as your last thing to do. So that's my advice for California Adventure. I feel like I have talked for a long time.
I know. As we were prepping this episode, I told Kate, I said, I'm really sorry. Like, I'm here with whatever you need, but I am not a Disneyland person. I am slowly learning because eventually we'll get there, but I'm slowly learning. And I did see, I think Allie Beth was talking about taking notes. I think maybe we'll come up with some sort of graphic way to get this to you guys
like
that
which
way.
Ones to do in what order might be helpful.
Yeah, so we'll come up with a couple lists here. We may throw some stuff in our Discord, and then probably post some stuff on like our Instagram stories like we've done with some of the other things that we've had. So we'll get that out to you guys here in the hopefully by next episode. Let's put it that way.
There's Conductor Jackson's also mentioning the Rogers musical, which is happening through the rest of the summer, but only till October 31st, I think. And that does have a virtual queue right now. So if you're going soon, make sure you look for that virtual queue as well in your app. It'll tell you when you can join. It's a couple times a day. I think you can join the virtual queue for that.
2 or 3, I think, whenever we looked up.
I'd have to look it up. But yes, but it's only through the summer, and then it's sadly gone because I'm hoping to see it this August because I want to see it before it disappears.
Yeah. And I will mention, just because we talked about single rider lines at Disneyland, at DCA, your single rider options are Goofy Sky School, Incredicoaster, Radiator Springs Racers does have a single rider option. Grizzly River Run, Web Slingers, and Soarin', which is fascinating to me that Soarin' over there has a single rider option.
I don't even think I've used the single rider option there, so
well,
I'm gonna go investigate that one.
They messed around with that at Disney World for like a week.
Yeah.
Like 3 months ago. All of it appeared out of nowhere. And everyone was like, Soarin' has a single rider line. And everyone was like, well, it does in Disneyland. And it's like, well, it hasn't come back since. So it must not have worked as well in Disney World. But so several more options for single rider. So if you're doing a solo trip, or if you're, if it's something that maybe you debated about using rider swap, maybe doing a single rider line instead and just doing your own type of rider swap might be a faster option for some of those, rather than waiting in a 60-minute queue and then doing the shorter line. It may be quicker to just do single rider lines if you are able to finagle that with younger kiddos or kiddos who don't want to ride.
Yeah. And Christina's asking like how single rider affects wait times. And I mean, I think it affects it probably positively because those people don't have to wait in a regular line and it's just spare seats they have to fill anyway. So that's why it's kind of a bonus for everybody.
I don't know that it affects it terribly because it's literally just it's something that they would have just sent with an empty seat anyway. Yeah. So, because I know when I've done single rider lines at like Disney World, it's like, okay, single rider here, like go.
Like, yeah, get in there.
Keep up with the people. You gotta go. We got seats to fill. Come on.
Yeah, and I've done the single rider lines. I haven't tried one in Soarin', so that I didn't even know they had one. That's news to me, honestly. So I was like, oh, okay, great.
Straight from the Disneyland website. So
look at that. Okay, great. But I have done often the Incredicoaster one. So you line up for that. The entrance for that is if you're coming around over the bridge down heading towards the Incredicoaster, it's kind of like there's a fence and you'll kind of see everybody lined up along the fence. And it's not like the exit of the ride. It's actually like just along this fence and you'll see a cast member with an umbrella and you end up going in one elevator and then you go over and you go down another elevator and then there's a line.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's a very strange, it's like the most awkward elevator ride ever. Yeah. But that's a single rider line. And then I will say in Radiator Springs Racers, I usually don't, if I go in the single rider line and it is like past the bridge, because there's a bridge you go under, if it's past the bridge, I usually come back later because I know that's going to take a pretty long time to go through. It's hard to predict with single rider lines, but in general, that one will probably take a little bit too long for me. So if it's past the bridge, maybe consider coming back later for that.
And those single rider lines can really be hit or miss at any park, no matter what you're going to. Yeah. I think about the ones that we have in Disney World, and it's like, you look at two roller coasters that we have them for. We have them for Rock and Roller Coaster in Hollywood Studios, and we have them for Expedition Everest at Animal Kingdom. Drastically different single rider lines. It just really depends. You may get super lucky. You may get stuck. So it's hard to know, especially with rides that are two-seaters. If you get more odd seats in things like something like Soarin' probably moves quicker because there's more seats that you can fill. So it's a higher likelihood that they'll have single individual seats in that particular attraction. So it really just depends. And it can be kind of hard to predict, but most of the time you're going to get a shorter wait.
Yeah. And I would say, like Smuggler's Run, I have waited in that for single rider for like an hour before because they just didn't need it. Yeah, and sometimes it goes really fast, and sometimes it's really long. So it's luck of the draw. It's like rolling the dice when you get the single rider line.
Yeah, but then something like I said, Expedition Everest, you can pretty much almost walk on single rider line.
It's always the way to go.
Super fast.
It's like we don't even bother if there's two of us. We're like, see you after. We're doing single rider.
Yeah, and then I think of like Smuggler's Run at Disney World's version. I feel like that line is never longer than like maybe 20 minutes tops for single rider.
That was the one I waited in for a long time.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think when it was like that, it might have been closer to when it opened-ish, and it was a little bit more popular. But if it gets busy, it's possible that you could be there for a while.
And generally speaking, those single rider lines do ebb and flow reflective of the standby lines. So if you're getting in a single rider line and the standby is only 15 minutes, it's going to be a drastically different single rider line than something that's 150 minutes, drastically different. And then just use your gut. If you get in line of that single rider line and you don't move for 15 minutes, that's probably bad news. And you should pivot, abandon ship, go somewhere else and circle back around.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's for any line, honestly, not just single rider lines, but if you get stuck in
if there's
a
no
queue
forward
of any
motion,
kind.
just come back, because they'll almost guarantee there'll be another time of day then it gets better, except for like maybe Rise the Resistance or something like that. And I think that Radiator Springs Racers, they've been really good, those cast members, kind of like letting you know kind of how long the wait is for a single rider, because you can't see how long it is from the entrance, which is true of most single riders anyway, but some of them, like Incredicoaster, you can see how many people are standing in line, which helps a lot for like the single rider line, but you can't see Radiator Springs Racers until you physically get in the line, and I've ditched that so many times, so like I'm just not, it's past the bridge, I'm done, I'm out, I'll come back. Well, I think we've covered it. Disneyland and Disney California Adventure, those are kind of my best tips for how to tour it well. Again, if you're feeling super overwhelmed by trying to figure all that out, I'm going to recommend, again, I'm not paid by them, I just use them for years. Touring Plans is a really great option for pre-planning out what you're going to do, and then also being able to optimize it on the fly based on current wait times and rides that are down and that kind of thing. So definitely recommend that.
Yeah, and like we mentioned, we'll come up with some sort of a graphic for you guys to have that kind of puts these lists in front of you so you can pick and choose and kind of put your puzzle pieces together, so to speak, from your Genie Plus list and your non-Genie Plus list, especially in Disneyland. But kind of get that out to you. There we go. That was a struggle. But we'll get that out to you so that way you guys have access to that, so it's a little clearer for you. And then next week, we will hop over to Florida, and we will be covering Magic Kingdom and Epcot is the plan for next week. So if you want more info about doing a single day in those parks, come on back next week, so that way we can
come back next week so
those.
Jackie can talk the whole time.
Hey, not the whole time. You have more input. Yes, it won't be the entirely Kate show, because we both have knowledge when it comes to Disney World. But some of the Genie Plus stuff, I feel like I've got a little bit of an edge on, so we can kind of collaborate on some of that stuff.
I will give you that. I will grant you that.
Just like, help, I don't know what I'm doing. Please send us a message. Reach out to us. You can find us on all of the socials. You can email us if that's your jam at momstreetusa@gmail.com. You can find us on our Discord. If you're not familiar with the Walrus Carp Pocket Fam Discord, we are a part of that and have our own Mom Street USA channel on there. So you can reach out to us on there as well. And links to all of that can be found in this general vicinity.
So, next week we're headed to Magic Kingdom and Epcot. And then after that, I'm headed to Disneyland, I think. So we'll do a little chat together, which will be fun.
So we'll have just a brief intermission episode but before we finish out our 3-part series on these park strategies. But we just really feel like something like this can be super helpful. I know a lot of people that like to do day trips or like to do solo trips, or are maybe only going to be able to get to the parks once every 2, 3, 4 years. So something like this can be super, super helpful. Not only that, but if you're someone that gets really overwhelmed with it, like I said, reach out for help. I do help people with itineraries when it comes to that, and Genie Plus and all of that. Like this, I look at rides and I make lists and I figure out what, strategy makes the most sense. So if you need help with that, like I said, please reach out so that way we can help you make the most of your singular park day, if that's your case.
Indeed. And Jackie's amazing at it. She's helping me for Disneyland Paris, because I only have time to plan the rest of my European adventure. So it's like, Jackie, help me, because I haven't been there for a long time. So,
and it's been fun. And I think we're planning on maybe doing at least one episode on some Disneyland Paris stuff kind of after Kate comes back from overseas, so we can give you guys all some insight on whether or not what we found was accurate, I guess, is
I know,
what it will
we're
end up
gonna look at
being.
that.
Like, oh, no, that didn't work. Or, yeah, it worked really well.
I know. We'll have to do like a 1-day itinerary for both of those
Yeah,
parks over there, because I think that but based on your research and my personal experience going there, we'll know it really well by that point. So it'll be great.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Alrighty. Well, I think that's it.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody for joining us for this episode of Mom Straight USA. Thank you to our chat for being extra super helpful with all the little details as we tried to conquer Disneyland and DCA in a day each, which is really hard to do, but that we gave our best advice for how to do that. And next week we'll head to Magic Kingdom and Epcot. And beyond that, thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Have a great night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.